This is Eyewitness News Up Close with Bill Ritter.
With faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States.
Donald J. Trump accepting the Republican nomination in Milwaukee Thursday night, just 5 days after that assassination attempt. So will the convention help increase his lead in the polls? And will he, in fact, be running against incumbent President Joe Biden? A growing number of Democrats want Mr. Biden to drop out of the race. This morning, we talked to Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis and Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman, both from New York. And this.
Being first is different. You are going to have every step be a little bit different and a little bit harder.
Bill Ritter's one-on-one interview with outgoing New York City Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanagh. Her first television interview after announcing that she is stepping down as the city's first woman fire commissioner. Good morning on this Sunday and welcome to Up Close. I'm Mike Marza. We'll have Bill's interview with the fire commissioner a little bit later in the show, but let's begin with the race for president. Former President Trump accepting his party's nomination for another run at the White House. Mr. Trump said that he wrote his speech after that assassination attempt. Did he change his tune and tone? And what did we learn from his comments? We begin with somebody who was at that convention. I talked to Republican Congresswoman from Staten Island, Nicole Malliotakis. So what a week as the nation watched the Republican National Convention. I'm interested to get your thoughts on former President Trump's speech last night. It was the longest acceptance speech in history, as we know, and it started off in a moment that we have never seen before, I think, from former President Trump. Really that delivering that message of unity that he talked about. But then about a half an hour in, he did kind of steer towards the rally, former President Trump. Are you concerned at all that pivot from the way he started the speech to the way he kind of had that middle portion? Are you worried that he missed an opportunity to pull in more of these undecided or independent voters?
I think one of the reasons why the speech was long was because he was highlighting a lot of his accomplishments. I mean, the truth is he did so much during those first 4 years that he had. He was able to create many jobs. He lowered taxes. He doubled the child tax credit. He secured the border. He brought us peace through strength. He was able to really, I think, do so much. And that is why the speech, he kept going to each of those points. And in contrast, we've seen how Joe Biden has dismantled a lot of those things. You know, we had cheap gas. Now we're paying about $1.25 more under this president. Inflation is still high, but the bigger issue is the interest rates right now are the highest they've been in 2 decades. And he dismantled all the security that we saw at the border with his 60 different policy changes. So I think people can understand and see that if they want to have a secure and safe country and they want to have economic prosperity and opportunity, that President Trump is the right choice. And that was what he was really focused on laying out last night.
But Congresswoman, how important is it for former President Trump and now his new running mate, J.D. Vance, to stick to those issues and to hammer home those differences between President Biden and former President Trump?
I think it is important. I think there's a stark contrast there. And the American people see, and I think that's why during this convention, you saw African Americans, Hispanics, immigrants. You saw also a union leader come and say, hey, they voted for President Biden, but they made a mistake. And now they're with President Trump because he's the one providing jobs and opportunity. He's the one who's keeping our borders secure. He's the one who led with peace through strength. We were not supporting 2 additional new wars. And I don't think those wars, quite frankly, would have happened if President Trump was in office. And I say that because it didn't happen when he was there.
You represent portions of New York. Is New York in play for the former president? He made that comment. Is that true? Do you really believe that?
Well, look, obviously, I think it's hard for a Republican to win statewide in New York, but we saw how close Lee Zeldin came in the last gubernatorial year. So President Trump did break the 40s when he ran 4 years ago, and I think that he has an opportunity to get very close again, it's hard for a Republican in New York, but he can get very close. And if he does get close in New York, what does that say about the rest of the country? He's going to crush it, I think, in those swing states. And that's what's going to pivot him to victory. But New York City in particular, people are concerned about the illegal immigration, the crime that we've seen, the 2 cops that were shot by an illegal immigrant, the 13-year-old girl in Queens raped by an illegal immigrant, a lot of individuals arrested out of these migrant shelters because they've committed crimes in the city. They're wreaking havoc, and we're paying for it. It comes at a huge taxpayer expense to provide all these free services. So I would say that issue, plus the congestion pricing, which there is a federal role. And as you know, President Biden's administration rubber stamped it. We sued because they didn't require a full and thorough economic impact statement as required by NEPA law. But President Trump said he would stop it if he wins. And I think that's a big issue, knowing that it polls about 65% in opposition here in the city of New York.
Only have about 90 seconds left, but I'm curious as the Democrats are trying to figure out what their ticket will look like as they head into November. If President Biden drops out, does that hurt or help former President Trump?
You know, in my view, it really doesn't make a difference, because whether it's President Biden or Kamala Harris or another Democrat, they still support this radical agenda that has become the Democratic Party. They support open borders. They support policies like the bail reform that releases individuals who are a danger back onto our streets. They have an anti-energy agenda, which has what fueled inflation, that is driving up gas and electric costs as well as food costs, because we need, energy to transport food as well. And so what I would say is it doesn't really matter who the Democrat is at this point. I think President Trump does need to focus on what he did last time, because he was a successful president, and remind people that we can go back to that. And we don't have to put up with dangerous cities or open borders or, the high energy costs or high interest rates where you can't pay your credit card debt or buy a home because you can't afford a mortgage.
And our thanks to Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. For the Democratic perspective, I talked to Congressman Dan Goldman of New York. Congressman, great to see you again.
You too. Great to be with you.
This conversation comes right on the heels of the Republican National Convention. Such an eclectic week of lineups with speakers. And of course, it culminated with former President Trump delivering his acceptance speech, the longest in history. I'm just curious your thoughts. What do you make of it all?
Well, look, I think what is clear is that the Republicans have doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on Donald Trump and the MAGA extremist wing of their party. And the selection of J.D. Vance just underscores that this is the future. Donald Trump is the Republican Party. And because Donald Trump is solely out for himself, and his grievance-filled speech last night, or on Thursday night, rather, was the sort of quintessential Trump rambling and selfish, narcissistic, personal interest, grievance-filled speech where there's nothing about a vision for the future. It's just about scaring people. And on the flip side, you have a Democratic Party that has passed historic legislation that has lowered prescription drug prices, that has created 9 million jobs since Joe Biden took over, brought manufacturing back here. The difference and the dichotomy between the two platforms, the two parties, is so stark right now that one truly believes in working for the people, that's the Democrats, and the other just believes in working for Donald Trump and will do whatever they can in order to do that.
Talking about the issues, though, unfortunately for Democrats, much of the news lately has been whether or not President Biden will continue in this race. He continues to face mounting pressure to exit the race, both from his colleagues in the Democratic Party, but also from people who own the purse strings. Giving the money, the donors, are also starting to dry up. So I'm just curious, as we stand right now, do you still believe that President Biden is the strongest candidate for the Democrats to beat former President Trump?
I think Joe Biden's record as president is historic. It's truly remarkable what he has done both domestically as well as internationally, leading the alliance of NATO and democratic countries to counter Russia, to support a very complex situation in the Middle East that he has managed very well, to expand NATO, to unify our allies. And when November 5th rolls around, whoever the Democratic candidate will be, it will be very clear that there is one party that truly does believe in democracy, that believes in the American people, that believes in the American dream, and wants to support people so that they can achieve the American dream. And there is another party that wants to give Donald Trump a dictatorship. And that is essentially the choice that Americans are going to have on November 5th.
And just one more on this topic, and you mentioned whoever is the Democratic nominee. If President Biden does decide to step down, would you favor leading all of the support behind Vice President Harris, or do you support more of an open process as you head into the convention?
Look, I think part of the reason why we are going through this as the Democratic Party is that we believe in democracy. And we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, that we're not just kowtowing to one person who's the leader of the party, no matter how many lies, no matter how many impeachments, no matter how many felon convictions he has. And so I do think that there will likely be and should be some degree of a democratic process, the timing of which is difficult. The situation with the finances can be difficult. But I'm confident that our leaders will set forward whatever policy or procedure that makes sense for us if the president does choose to withdraw.
I want to pick your legal brain for a moment because you're a former special prosecutor, also prosecuted the impeachment hearing against former President Trump. Earlier this week, Hunter Biden asked that his convictions be tossed, and it was based on that Supreme Court ruling knocking down the role of a special prosecutor. Now, within that context, former President Trump's classified documents case was also tossed out. But from your perspective, your legal mind, do you support Hunter Biden's effort to get his convictions also tossed out?
I have no opinion on Hunter Biden's criminal case. That's for the Department of Justice to handle, and I trust that the department will handle it appropriately. I don't think that the judge's ruling in Florida, the Trump-appointed judge who essentially went against all legal precedent and persuasive authority.
As we now move into the focus of the Democratic National Convention and the process that you're now playing out, as you watch the RNC, there clearly was a renewed sense of enthusiasm. I mean, you had Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt. So whatever you make of that, I don't know, but the enthusiasm was high. Are you concerned at all about this enthusiasm gap between Republicans and Democrats right now?
Not at all. And I think it says a lot that Hulk Hogan is the one person from a 4-day convention that you're mentioning. I'm not sure that's the person that we want to trust and believe in is as to who the president should be. And I think that dichotomy is so important when you have 40 of 44 former cabinet secretaries and senior officials in Donald Trump's first presidency who refuse to endorse him. The ones who know him the best do not support him as president. And on the flip side, you have incredible support for Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris agenda, the Biden-Harris accomplishments. And what you will see at our convention is a very, very different perspective, which is not this dark, gloomy, macabre view of America, but it is actually a positive view of America in the future, where we are going to focus on Americans. We are going to focus on building the middle class and building the lower class, giving everyone access to opportunity by reducing costs, making things more affordable. And the difference will be very stark.
We'll watch it all play out. Congressman Dan Goldman, always appreciate being on Up Close. Thank you.
Thank you.
So where is the presidential race right now? And will it stay between Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden? Political consultant Hank Scheinkopf joins us now. Hank, always great to see you.
Thank you.
Let's dig into the RNC debrief. After a week of what I think a lot of people viewed as a success by staying on message, it was punctuated by former President Trump's longest acceptance speech in history. That was really a sandwich of somewhat unity, more of a unified tone, but in the middle was vintage Trump with a lot of vengeance sort of mixed in, talking about these grievances. How much do you think former President Trump hurt the message of the Republicans as they head into this final front of this election?
Oh, not at all. It's exactly what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear about their newest martyr, Donald Trump, was nearly murdered, which is true. How he was fighting for the cause, how he won't give up, and how they shouldn't. And by the way, how they shouldn't remember anyone who tried to get in their way as they sought to take back the nation.
And so when you think about the Democrats now and these big decisions ahead and how they move forward, what can we be looking at to give some indication of how they're going to lean or how they're going to focus on the next few months?
Hard to say. They've got to, it's kind of a selfish consideration on their part. They see Donald Trump as a real problem, more so than ever before. The attempted assassination, plus Joe Biden's performance post-debate and during the debate. And now they see a party that could be disunited while the Republicans are so united. They're worried about losing the House or not be able to get it back, losing the Senate, losing local elections and getting into more trouble while losing the House. So this is a very serious moment for them.
Would former President Trump prefer to run against Joe Biden or perhaps one of these other candidates?
Here's the issue for the Republicans. They've spent literally, by this time, millions of dollars in polling and focus groups and other activity, coming up with a plan to run against Joe Biden. Now, what do? They're going to have to come up with a whole new game plan if it's Kamala Harris or if it's someone else with Kamala Harris or who she's running with. Likely, in American history, more often than not, governors and war heroes have won elections and presidential elections. So it's likely the Democrats will look for someone like that who can take on Trump and someone who can, frankly, fend off Vance, whose real job here is going to be the attacker later in the campaign.
Hank Scheinkauf, we'll see how it all shakes out. Always appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just ahead, Bill's one-on-one interview with Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanagh. Why she is leaving and the challenges she now faces and faced in her role as the first woman to lead the mostly male department.
Welcome back to Up Close. She made history when she became the first woman to be commissioner of the FDNY, the biggest fire department in the country's biggest city. But this past week, Laura Kavanagh, in a move that seemed to most New Yorkers to be out of the blue, announced she's leaving her job. So we asked her to come on Up Close and answer the obvious question. Why are you leaving? And like all the other times she's been on this program, she said quickly, what time do you want me there? Laura Kavanagh joins us now. Commissioner,
Thanks for having me.
welcome to Up Close again.
Thanks.
It could be your last time on Up Close.
It could be, and I feel a little emotional about that, very much so.
And we do too. I hope it's not, however. So why are you leaving?
It was time. I posted something I think a few people have read that may have revealed, I'm a very private person, right? So I don't talk much about, what's going on either in my personal life or even how I feel what this job takes. And at the end of the day, it takes 100%. The members deserve it. New Yorkers deserve it. And I always knew that I needed to leave when I wasn't going to be able to give it 100% anymore. So this is something I'd been thinking about for a while, had struggled with because I love my job so much. But I just knew, I spent some time with family and the answer was right in front of me, which is I need to see more of them and I need to pass the torch to somebody when I am still at 100%, right? You don't want to wait until that last moment. You want to take the right moment.
It did shock a lot of people who saw you giving 100% and more importantly, saw how you approached the job.
Yeah.
You were honest about it. You took a different viewpoint. You were not part of the old boys network. You wanted to take it to new places. I want to get into all that. But why? Why now? And why not 100%? And how did you feel that?
So I think two things. I think most New Yorkers only got to know me when I took this job, right? So for them, it might not feel like they've known me in this job for very long. It's been 2.5 years, but I've been at the department for a decade. So a lot of what I've been doing, behind the scenes, and those things do take a toll. Telling a family that they've lost someone, going to Washington to go up against the political environment to pass a bill, doing the 24/7 response. I love those things. They are incredible. They are worthwhile. But, I'm a marathon runner, as you know. I've been doing them for a decade. So it's not a couple of years for me. It's a decade of this journey. And, I knew that at some point I just would not be able to give it 100% anymore.
Right. The public sees you though not with a decade of experience in this company, in this big division, this big fire department, the biggest in the country, the biggest in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
But they see you as a couple years as the acting commissioner and then the commissioner.
Yeah.
And they're asking why? Why now?
Yeah. It was the right time. I've done so much on the things I cared about. The department is as diverse as it's ever been. but it needs to do more there. We are, making huge strides on lithium-ion batteries. We've luckily gotten this legislation passed the city and the state, and soon to pass at a federal level. But there's so much more to do there as well. Our members need more safety equipment. There's far more lobbying to do on Capitol Hill, especially when it comes to the safety of our members, to their equipment, to their funding. Firefighting and EMS work is only getting more dangerous. And so someone needs to keep going at that. I've done those things. I've made huge, I think, leaps forward in those things that I care about around the safety of my members, about the safety of New Yorkers, around diversity. But, that road never ends. Somebody has to keep going at 100%.
So how long do you stay in this job? Mayor Adams says, hey, you can keep this for as long as you want.
Yeah.
It's going to take us a long time to find someone to replace you.
And I appreciate that, and that one of the hardest parts of my decision was like how much I've enjoyed working for him and how much I care about him in this city. So I haven't made a decision, him and I will talk about when the time is right to actually make that transition. One thing I can promise is I'm always going to make sure that the fire department is in good hands, whether it's part of this transition or in the future. I'm always here to support it, so not leaving anybody.
When this word came out, which was about the same weekend, I think, as the attempted assassination of the former president, so it kind of got buried a little bit. Yeah. Your issue did. What did a lot of the people came out and said into the gossip columns and everything else? Oh well, because she and Adams didn't get along. But you hear Adams talk this last week, and he says, "Hey, I want to keep you in the administration somewhere." Was there any pressure from the mayor's office?
Absolutely not. I really, like I said, working for him has been the opportunity of a lifetime. And really, I can't say that. I've worked for a lot of people. He is a phenomenal boss. He is one of the best bosses I've ever had. Having to have that conversation with him wasn't any easier than having to have it with my friends, my family, and my coworkers.
He says he would love to have you work in his administration.
Yeah.
Have you talked about it with him?
I have, and I appreciate that, but I think I bring the same question here, which is, can I give 100% to what they need? And that's always going to be the question for me. So whatever I look at, whatever we talk about, I am here to help the department. I'm here to help the city. That will be true in any role, but I'm only saying yes to a job if it's the right thing.
So most New Yorkers, you caught them off guard. A lot of people in the fire department, most people in the fire department, love you. I mean, that's the word I can use best that describes this. They love you, and they love what you've done with the place. There are some who don't. Was that the pressure that you were feeling?
Not at all. That I knew, like you said, I've been here for 10 years. I've watched the way it is to be a leader in this city. I've watched, in particular, what it means to be a woman in a leadership role. I actually wrote my thesis when I was going to school at night before I took this job about how the pressures of negative coverage of women in particular, what the pressures it puts on them. So I knew what I was getting into. That pressure did not remove me from this job. I knew what it was, and I think, it's not easy, but I don't mind it. It's part of the gig. I think if you're doing the right thing, with it comes critique, and that's okay.
Well, yes, of course, and that makes you better sometimes, right?
Yes, absolutely. Self-reflection is a good thing in life.
I did a little research into this, and the last 6 commissioners over the last 30 years, 30 were not firefighters. So the kind of BS that came out, well, she's not a firefighter. Well, there were 2 other commissioners out of the last 6, you're the 3rd, that were not firefighters. And in fact, most of the commissioners in the history of the FDNY, 2 to 1, have not been firefighters.
That is correct. The vast majority of commissioners have been civilians. I am the only civilian that has actually spent a decade in the department before becoming commissioner. So I think it's fair to say I was the most experienced civilian commissioner that they've had. And I do agree that that's an unfair criticism. I appreciate that people disagree with my decisions in some case, and that's okay. I don't think that has anything with me to being a civilian. The job of a commissioner, no matter what background they come from, is to be a great executive of the agency. And that's what the uniformed commissioners have been. That's what the civilian commissioners have been, executives. And that's what I am, and I think I'm good at it. But certainly, people are allowed to disagree.
In March, the Attorney General, Tish James, came to help one of her relatives, and she gave the benediction, I guess, or talked to him, and he gave a little speech. You said you want to speak, and she did. And there were boos in March. Was that the beginning of you feeling like maybe I can't give 100%? And because you sent a note to her saying, I'm sorry for what some of these people did in the fire department, and they booed you because she was prosecuting Donald Trump. And somebody leaked that text.
Honestly, that's life. That's definitely not the beginning. Like I said, this is just part of the job we do here, is to be critiqued, And I'd also say, I think that's the most that's the most upset I've ever been on this job, in terms of just the way we were portrayed in the press, because of what should be clear is the behavior of only a couple of our members. The vast majority of our members always do the right thing. That's the most mad I've ever been.
Yeah.
And if that's the most mad I've ever been, you know, no, we should never write anything at the height of our anger, but that is the most upset I've ever been, and that's about as rough as it gets for me.
You're the second groundbreaking female commissioner under Mayor Adams. The commissioner of the NYPD also left. Is that sending a message to other women who might join the administration?
I don't think so, actually. I hope if those women are watching that they call me so that I can tell them why not. I will say, you know, being the first, and I said this, I think when I was appointed, I've said it to other women who I'm hoping to mentor on the way up, being first is different. You are going to have every step be a little bit different and a little bit harder, and that's just the way it is, and that's okay. And I think that does mean sometimes that maybe our tenures are shorter or that we make different decisions, but it's not a reason not to be first. I am truly hoping that I made it just a little bit easier, and so for the next person, that path is a little bit clearer.
And will you participate in getting the next person?
Of course, yes. Okay. I would love to help, and like I said, you know, I'm here for the fire department forever.
Well, I think a lot of people are sad to see you go. I appreciate you coming on, being honest about all this, and listen, people think about what they're doing in their lives all the time. That's a healthy thing. But your impact here has been something wonderful, and I hope you understand that. People really did see what you did, and what you did with those lithium-ion batteries. You know, no one has ever done anything like that before in this department.
I appreciate it so much. I mean, every decision I've ever made has been with the idea of, will this be right for the department in the city in 5 years, in 10 years? And I think that will be true.
Well, I hope you can come back up close at one time with your new job. How's that?
Okay. Me too.
And if you're still on the job for Operation 7 Save a Life in January, I hope you come to our kickoff breakfast. That would be great. Wait,
right.
Wait a minute, hold on. We do some. Yes, I did.
More
see.
Requests, right?
We always introduce and invite former commissioners. And if you're a former commissioner, you can join us.
I promise, whatever you need, I will show up, no matter the role.
You've been a great friend to the station and fire safety. And
Thank you so much.
Bill. Good luck to you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
All right. When we come back, my pal Mike Marza with our next segment.
And that will do it for this edition of Up Close. Tiempo with Joe Torres is coming up next. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Mike Marza. Have a great rest of your weekend.